Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Today you may see that we are on a different location. We are live on set in my kitchen because today I am going to be making a very special treat. This is something I've been wanting to do for a little while and now I have the perfect excuse to do it because this video is going to be going up on the 28th of December, which would have been Stan Lee's birthday, and I think there's no better way to celebrate than to make a delicious cake. And we are going to be making a cake from the Marvel Superhero Cookbook, which I've been wanting to do another video on. This specific cake, it's not so much the cake itself that's got me interested, it's this frosting recipe. You see, the previous owner of the cookbook, our dear friend Virginia, a fellow Virginia, only made a few notes throughout this cookbook, but there is a particular note on this frosting recipe that as soon as I read it, I knew I was going to have to make it. So I have a few questions about this frosting recipe, but we'll address them when we start making it. We'll burn that bridge when we get to it. First, I want to make the cake itself. In this recipe for one 9-inch layer cake, we will need 1 cup of flour, half a cup of sugar, 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder, 1 egg, 1/4 cup of butter. The recipe also says you could use margarine. We're not going to use margarine because margarine sucks. The recipe doesn't really specify to do this, but I actually left both our butter and our egg out at room temperature for a little while. This way our butter is going to soften and it's going to be much easier to mix. And with the egg at room temperature, that's going to mix with the butter much better. It's not going to come out so lumpy when you are mixing them together. 1/4 cup of milk. I am using whole milk today. And finally, 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Our baking pan is greased and we are letting the oven preheat to 375. First, we will be sifting together our dry ingredients. So now we have our dry ingredients sifted together. Now it is time to combine the wets. The recipe only uses the specific commands of combine and mix. It doesn't really say what we're mixing with. So I don't really know what they want me to mix with. So after careful deliberation, I've decided that the stand mixer is probably my best option, and I will be using the paddle attachment, which you can just use the whisk attachment, or you could use a hand mixer. The benefit of the paddle attachment is we're going to get a more aerated batter. This is better for things like cakes and cookies. I do notice this recipe had us add in the sugar with the rest of the dry ingredients, which sometimes it's better to add in the sugar with the butter and cream the two together, because that's also going to create a fluffier batter. You would just cream the sugar and butter together and then you would add in your eggs and vanilla. But I'm just going to go with what the recipe is telling us to do this time. I'm realizing now I wasn't totally following my own advice about the ingredients being the same temperature to help them mix better, because my egg and my butter was room temperature, but my milk was still pretty cold. So that actually might be the reason this is looking a little scrambled eggy. But we're just going to give this a little more time and we might be able to smooth it out a bit more. Alright, this is still looking a little bit weird, but I think I'm just going to go ahead and add in my flour mixture. This is actually looking much, much nicer. I'm just going to go ahead and scrape down the sides of the bowl a little bit. But this is looking nice and smooth. So the concerns I had about the lumpiness of it before are pretty much gone. I think this is looking like a nice batter. I think I'm going to mix it for a tiny bit longer. I don't want to over mix it, but I want to make sure it is all fully incorporated. All right, so here is our batter. I think it's looking very nice. It tasted good also. I licked the paddle to make sure it was good. And I'm going to add a little bit of a twist to this recipe because you see I have this little inset that goes into my cake pan, and so we are going to make our cake extra exciting. The recipe actually does specify that you could make your cake extra special by adding in things like raisins or chopped peanuts into the batter. I'm not a terrorist, so I'm not going to be doing that. So we have ran into a technical problem in that I did not divide this optimally. You can see there is significantly more blue than red, and we needed significantly more red than blue. So if you look at the depth of our batter, I'm not quite sure how this is gonna optimally work out, but we are going to take out... I'm not going to be able to do this one-handed. Give me a second. All right, convenient little stand has been removed, and you can see there is a distinctive ridge where there is a lot more blue than red. And I do feel like this recipe did not make a very large amount of batters. So I hope this is just the most massive expanding cake batter I've ever seen, because this is going to be one flat cake. All right, we are going to put this bad boy into the oven for 25 minutes. Hopefully when it comes out, it will look a little less like Go-Gurt. Let's check in with our live studio audience. What do you think, Claudia? Okay, here is our finished cake. I actually jumped the gun on this one. It had about 7 minutes left, but it was already starting to smell like it was almost done. You can see it's getting very brown on the edges, and I think any more than that, and we would have one very disappointing cake. And I did check to make sure it is all the way done. It actually did rise a little bit. I like how it looks. It's not the red and blue I was going for. It's got more of a, blue raspberry watermelon gushers kind of energy. Hopefully that doesn't trick my brain into thinking that's what it tastes like. So we are going to let this cool all the way, and then we're going to start making our frosting. So this is where things are going to get interesting, because we're about to make the frosting recipe that had no less than 3 X's crossing it out and an emphatic do not use. So we're going to find out what went so horribly wrong, which this recipe actually sparked a bit of debate amongst my family, because we noticed that the sugar it tells you to use, well, rather, it doesn't specify what kind of sugar to use, and we just assume it's granulated sugar, because in the cake recipe, it just simply says sugar. And a few other frosting recipes that are on that page specify confectioner's sugar or powdered sugar, which is actually what I would expect to be in this kind of recipe. Powdered sugar is going to dissolve in it's not going to have the graininess of granulated sugar. So we thought it was interesting that they didn't tell you, hey, use a sugar that's not going to be grainy. So we're kind of expecting this recipe might come out grainy. I'm expecting it to be a little bit less like a fudgy chocolate frosting and more like a slightly grainy cinnamon roll batter, but we'll find out. Now we do have one slight problem, as the recipe specifically says to use a blender, which I don't own a blender. What I do have is one of these, so we're going to see how well that works. You may ask, why would I not be using the food processor that I have sitting right there? And that's because we do have a decent bit of liquid in our recipe, and sometimes the food processor isn't going to be super great for something that has a lot of liquid. You're going to have the possibility that it just drips out the bottom. So we're going to try the NutriBullet. So for our real chocolate frosting, we're actually going to be cutting the recipe in half as it specifies. It is for a double layer cake, and we only made one layer of cake. So for this recipe, we will need half a cup of granulated sugar, 3 ounces of evaporated milk, 2 ounces of chocolate. I am using bittersweet chocolate because that's what I had on hand. And finally, around 1/8 of a teaspoon of vanilla extract. Alright, we have our NutriBullet plugged in. We have our mixture. Let's actually give it a good shake. I find things mix a little bit better if you shake them up beforehand. And we're just going to see how this works. Gonna give it another shake. Let's take a look at that. Sounds grainy as I'm opening this. Oh Lord. This is what we're looking at right now. So this, if you can see, that is not a frosting. That is a liquid. This is consistently a little more like my protein shakes. Let's give it a little more. Oh my goodness, it sounds so sandy. We're gonna give it another shake. See if I can't smooth it out a bit. So this is pretty much what I was expecting from this recipe. It was going to be a very thin, vaguely chocolatey, just more like a cinnamon roll icing, but on the grainy side of texture. But I will say I'm going to try not to pour it all over the counter. Let's move. Here we go. There, now you can get a nice look at all of that we're going to pour all over our beautiful cake. I must say I'm a little sad that that's going to be the fate that my cake will befall, is just to be drenched in whatever this is. But we're going to do it anyway. So unfortunately, it is now time for us to ruin this beautiful, beautiful cake. You know, I think the reason it's so flat is maybe because there wasn't any baking soda or salt. I don't know. This is a flat cake, but it is very beautiful like this. And unfortunately, we are just going to ruin it by dumping whatever this is on top. But, well, we're just going to do it. We are using the nice plates today. We're being very fancy, and I am going to use the trick where you have strips of parchment paper on the edges that you pull out from under your cake after it has been decorated, so you create a nice clean line, because I am gonna do my absolute best to make this actually look good. So let's just go ahead and do it. I think I needed a little bit more parchment paper. I think we're going to have a bit of an explosion here. Is it supposed to look like that? Oh, see, we're going to go over the edge. I think that one's more my fault than the recipe's fault. Is it supposed to look like this? I don't really know. Get some nice texture here. Oh, this is visually really something. This is an abomination. This is like the most hideous thing I have ever produced in the kitchen. Ever. And I swear I was trying to follow the recipe. I wasn't trying to make it terrible on purpose. This is just what we ended up with. I mean, maybe my color choices on the cake aren't helping matters, but this is. I am just speechless. I have brought shame and dishonor upon my family for allowing this to exist. I I don't know what went wrong. I don't know, but we're just gonna have to see. The ultimate test, does this actually taste good? Now let's see, what is the texture on our cake? Serve up a nice little piece. All right, let's push that very, very far away. The less I'm looking at it, the better. So here's our little cake slice. It does look cool color-wise. That little inset looked pretty neat. So far, it feels a little dense as I'm cutting. It smells good. Okay. It's a little on the dense side. The cake is a little on the dense side. The flavor is not bad. The icing looks absolutely horrendous, but it's actually not adding very much to the cake, which is a good thing. It adds nothing but existential horror. Flavor-wise, it's okay. We have like a hint of chocolate going on. So that's not a negative flavor-wise. All the flavors are good. The cake is just dense. Let's actually go for a little corner bite here. Something on the edge. Okay, so I like how it got a little bit crunchy on the edge. As you can see that this cake is a bit of an odd shape. Now, I think that is partly my own fault. I don't think we can blame that entirely on the recipe, because you saw how uneven my filling of the special little inset was. That was entirely my own fault. I do feel like this cake needs some more leaveners. There's just something weird going on here. Were I to make this again for some ungodly reason, I would personally use the creaming method to prepare my butter and sugar. I would have not put the sugar in with the dry ingredients. I would have put it in with the butter. I might not have even included milk, though I don't want to know what this cake tastes like when you have even less moisture added. I would definitely not use that frosting. That frosting's going to be a no for me. It's not necessarily detracting from anything but aesthetics, but I think the aesthetic is bad enough that that's gonna be a thumbs down for me on the frosting. It does not taste bad. I'm absolutely gonna eat this full cake. But if you want to present something to somebody, say if you want to make a special birthday celebration for a legend of the comics industry, that pile of crap right there is not necessarily what I would recommend. So I'm sorry, Stanley, I have created an abomination in your name and I have brought shame upon this household. But I guess I'm just gonna eat this cake. I mean, it's not pretty, but I'm hungry and I like cake. So I hope you guys enjoyed watching this journey that I went on. Let me know if you're thinking of making this same cake. If you own a blender and were actually able to make this frosting the way you're intended to, and if it turned out any different, or if it was whatever the hell that is. So anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day.